If you want to chime in what's happening with your favorite KFAN shows, you can make your voice heard on the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. Just let us know what you have to say by texting your message to 64686. That's 64686. Standard text message and data rates apply.
Ladies and gentlemen, from the fighting state of Minnesota, the super accomplished, learned, and adroit track coach for Apple Valley High School. He does that by day. He covers the Minnesota Vikings for the Star Tribune and StarTribune.com by day and night. Via Twitter, he is at Ben Goessling. Can I get a witness and a raucous round of applause for the scribe, ladies and gentlemen? Mr. Ben Goessling joining us here at the Great Minnesota Get-Together. Did you get that newsletter? Access Vikings is the newsletter out for this week, and you got any to pass out to the throng?
The newsletter comes out on Fridays, and it is all electronic, so you can sign up for it. Actually, we'll be over, our Star Tribune booth is right over on the corner of, right over the edge of the grandstand booth.
Just to the left ramp is the best way to say it.
Yep, on Carnes and kind of the edge of the grandstand booth. So there's places to sign up over there as well. But yeah, it comes out every Friday. Write an insider analysis piece, answer some mailbag questions, do some fun trivia, history kinds of things. Found a picture last week of the Vikings practicing at the State Fair Coliseum.
Wow.
After a Thanksgiving snowstorm in 1964.
Oh, wow.
So, since we've covered the team since day one, there's all these old photographs. And I've had fun kind of going back into those things. So throw some of those in the end of the newsletter just for a kind of a lighthearted way to end it.
Well, I had fun with a tweet that you had when you were in Philadelphia, and it's at Ben Goessling, Goessling. Please follow him on Twitter, as 9 to Noon does. Franklin Field, because Franklin Field's the first place the Philadelphia Eagles play.
Correct.
And there's a dear friend of mine, God rest his soul. His name's David Hooper. At Canterbury, you've been to the booth before. Yep. 3 booths to the right. I call them the track referees. They're the stewards. So if we have some consternation or some cutting off or some perceived overly zealous riding or whatever.
They have these when humans run around tracks too.
Right.
They also have stewards.
Oh, they do?
Yes.
Oh, sweet.
Same idea.
Hold all tickets. We have a steward's inquiry if you've ever been to the racetrack and heard that. Well, David Hooper he's from Texas. No, he's from Philadelphia, but he lived in Texas, Georgetown, Texas, and he died a couple of years ago. Now, being a Philadelphia native, he is an age-old Philadelphia Eagles fan. I mean, his historical knowledge of the team, that we would chat a lot about that up in the Canterbury press box, just throwing it back to older memories from days gone by. And he told me about Franklin Field and his reverence and the reverence and respect those in the city of Philadelphia always have for Franklin Field. Yeah. What they did, what they're doing, and what they're going to do. So last year, when we had that night game, I went over to Franklin Field just to kind of get the feel of what it was like back in the Roman Gabriel days, or even before that, stuff like that.
Chuck Bednarik.
That's a great one. Chuck Bednarik
had a big statue of him in the bowels of
the field. That was Mr. Hooper's go-to reference. He met him, and he told me about his games there and everything. And, it's just really cool when you meet somebody, and they're just, whether you're into it or not, or you like it or not, it was like you and that 5,000 relay or whatever in the Olympics. I mean, we're just so into it that it's fascinating, and you were there over the weekend. What do you think?
It was pretty cool. I was going, I had a couple of things that I wanted to do. I've done the Rocky Steps before. I actually went and did that, and I think I saw Josh McCown walking over there with a cup of coffee. He wasn't running up the steps that morning, but just saw him walking around with his wife, kind of enjoying the morning. But I thought, I want to go try to see if I can get on the track at Franklin Field, because that's where the Penn relays are. So it was partially for that, but also knowing the Eagles played. That, in fact, was where Vince Lombardi lost his only playoff game as a head coach in the NFL.
Wow.
Lost, obviously, as an assistant coach for the Giants in 1958 in the famous game against the Colts. But the 1960 NFL Championship game, he was head coach of the Packers. Bednarik basically laid on Jim Taylor for the last 10 seconds or so on the clock to let it run out. Eagles win the game.
Wow. Jim Taylor, Packers running back, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. So that, I walked through the bowels of it. I was just trying to see if I can get in. And there's a door open, so I kind of did the journalist, act like you know where you're going.
All right.
Forgiveness, not permission. Go on the track. There's people running on it and stuff. It's like, okay, great. And so I went through the bowels of it, and they had all sorts of old pictures of Lombardi and a statue of Ben Eric. It was very, very cool. It was, it's one of those kind of hallowed places for a number of reasons. And
Big time.
It's on the Penn campus.
Yeah.
And to think about, an NFL team playing there just kind of gives you a window into, 60 years ago when they stopped playing there, probably 50 years ago. But it just feels like another lifetime with how much bigger the NFL is now. So it's kind of fun to go back to those places when they still are standing and see what they look like.
Well, I'm not an elite track and field's mind. I mean, I played basketball in high school with Dwight Stone's nephew.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that's why I did high jump in high school for the track team, simply because I started doing it in like 9th grade because I got to meet Dwight Stone.
Sure.
And it's like, oh, wow. I mean, that was you on the cover of Sports Illustrated 2-3 years ago. Holy cow, this is incredible. Chris Roberts was the young man's name. So that's like my track and field experience is running some relay and doing high jump. But I'm not an elite track and field mind. I'm an elite run on turf or dirt or poly horse racing track type mind. But correct me if I'm wrong here. The Penn relays. That's relay immortality.
It is,
right?
Yes.
And for what reason?
Well, it is the oldest track meet in the country, I believe. It goes back to 1895, and it's one of those that whether the high school field, the college field, and certainly the professional field, you see a lot of guys go in there early in an Olympic year, probably early in a World Championship year. They get elite talent that comes in there because everybody knows that meet is prestigious.
Yeah.
Competitive fields tend to bring out other elite runners. I mean, it's sort of this thing of the fun thing in that sport is that when you know there's good competition, you don't run away from it. You're like, this is going to make me better, even if it's just for training purposes. I want to go up against the best.
Yeah.
So when all of those people get together, it turns into a really fun setting. It's right by the Amtrak track, so I remember when I was covering baseball in D.C., I would take Amtrak up to Philadelphia for games sometimes, or even take it to New York, and you go through Philly, and you go right by Franklin Field on the track, and you can kind of peek in there every once in a while just from the Amtrak car, and I thought, I would love to get in there someday and just see what it's like. And the Penn relays are during draft weekend, so unlikely I'll actually be able to ever go, at least while I'm covering the Vikings. But it was certainly a lot of fun to step in there and just think about the amount of history that's happened there, both in the sport I coach by day and the sport I cover by day and night.
Now, Ben was in Philadelphia for the Life Changer, the 3rd preseason game. Saw him in the locker room, and we're going to chat about some of his thoughts with that final 53 around the corner. But at 11 a.m. today, Ben is taking part in an Access Vikings podcast right around the corner from us. Tell us more about the podcast, who's going to be on it, and like what do you hit from the Great Minnesota Get-Together?
Yeah, so we've done this a couple times, Andrew Kramer and I, and it'll be a cast of 3 today. It'll be Andrew, Mike Rand, and myself. Our typical normal podcast we do every week, we are doing a live recording of it at the State Fair.
Sweet.
We're going to spend a lot of time. Andrew and I did kind of dueling 53-man projections yesterday. It's in today's paper. So we're going to kind of break down some of those things, where we differed, where we agreed, and just kind of set up the season as we get into it here. So it should be a lot of fun.
That's going to take place at 11 a.m.?
Correct.
Yep, right after his hour with 9 to noon. And when we return, we will get into that 53 that we think is going to take place for the Vikings after cuts tomorrow. He's Ben Goessling, a weekly contributor to 9 to noon and Bumper to Bumper with Barrero. Likewise for Vikings Football Sunday, the pregame show. You can hear him before each Vikings game there with main man Muss. It's 10:12. 9 to noon is at the State Fair on a sultry Monday adjacent to the grandstand at FM 100.3 KFAN.
Come join us at the 2024 Minnesota State Fair live from Carousel Park, presented by Mesh Besher and Spence. We're broadcasting live through Labor Day. You can come buy our favorite fan merch and learn about your shot to be the Mesh Besher and Spence Rube of the Day and win a prize pack. Get full details now, KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
And then I shouldn't ask this question because you are the beat writer for the. So I'm Star Tribune guy.
Yeah.
Just like I'm Twitter guy.
Yep.
And it's like, it's X school. It's called X, but I mean, I'm never going to say, and I've never heard anybody say, oh, hey, I X'd at you.
No.
You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I stick with Twitter. That's cool. But Minnesota Star Tribune.
Yes.
We have a name change. We have is it a branding change?
Yeah.
I know the app changed.
Yep.
And a lot of work went into that a few weeks ago.
They got a mascot, too.
Yep.
We have a mascot. I haven't met Stribby yet, but
I thought Royce retired.
There was, I think, a thing to sign up to if you wanted to do the mascot thing, you could.
What's the mascot's name?
Stribby. Stribby the gray duck.
Old Stribby.
So we are all Minnesota. It's not Stribby the goose, it's Stribby the gray duck. That's an important distinction in Minnesota.
Yeah, right. Duck, duck, gray duck.
Correct.
I grew up in Washington, D.C. Don't hate on me. Duck, duck, goose. I never heard.
Superior game.
Duck, gray duck. Until I moved out here.
5% goes to Greenway.
Yeah. What?
Seriously.
Always. So why is it a superior game when it's the same game?
No, it's not the same game.
What?
If you think, we got a deep dive here into the strategy.
So you've written about this.
I have not, but every Minnesotan kind of is taught this over the years.
Well, just let me explain the Washington, D.C. days at Lord Baltimore Junior High School in Oxon Hill, or before that, Apple Grove Elementary School in Oxon Hill. It's the circle, and you're walking around, duck, 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 goose.
Right.
And then you run around the circle.
But as soon as you start to say goose, you go guh. It's a tell to the person that you're tapping that they need to go.
Oh.
So if I do gray duck, if I do green duck, I can fake you out.
Oh, come on.
It's higher level strategy for Minnesotans who are just intellectually a little bit ahead of everybody else. So everybody's above average.
I can't argue with that. So that's beautifully laid
not everybody
out.
can handle it, but we can.
I never have heard that. So again, you're the beat writer. You are the A beat writer covering the Minnesota Vikings for the Star Tribune, StarTribune.com. Why were you in Philly? I mean, the third preseason game, it's you weren't in Cleveland.
Right.
All right. And I'm not trying to be like sports editor guy or editor-in-chief guy here, like asking some questions on a Monday catch-up with 19 meetings like everybody in the world has except us three, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it is.
Like the question would be, let me get this straight. Well, that's our quarterback, and they had joint practices.
Yep.
And those are atopics.
Yep.
And he wasn't there, and then it's the third preseason game.
Yep.
Did we send him to see Franklin Field?
No, we cover all of them, obviously. So it's one of those things where Mark Craig is a Cleveland native, and this was a trip home for him. So some of it was, if we're going to send one, he's going to go do that. That is still the only stadium I have never been to.
Yeah.
Is Cleveland Brown Stadium, but we go again next year, I believe. So we'll check that one off the list. But
they're pining for a new stadium.
They are.
Yeah,
they won't have it by next year, though.
Oh, they do?
They won't by next year. I unless they set several world records in construction time. I don't think we'll have the new stadium by next year. But so Mark went to that because he's from there, kind of was able to get a chance to see family and stay with family while he was there, and then we covered them all. So somebody had to go to Philly.
I got you.
And as the lead guy, I'm like, okay, I'll take the. I'll raise my hand for that one.
Good.
It was
great
fine.
seeing you.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was fast.
Yeah.
So being in Philly, you wrote about ball security and Andre Carter II strong play. Now, for those who may have missed it, what was in it? What resonated? What sticks even on this sticky Monday?
Yeah. So the ball security thing was interesting because O'Connell brought it up twice after the game. Almost kind of went out of the way to do it. And when he does that, I mean, you've talked to him enough. You know this, that if he brings something up on his own, it's been probably stuck in his craw. It's something he wants to emphasize. And he said they finished turnover free. They did have the one turnover with J.J. McCarthy on the pick, but that was the only one. And obviously, Jaron Hall got bailed out of the one early in that game, but no fumbles, which was the big deal because fumbles last year were a huge issue and obviously something that bothered him. And if you didn't follow it through the season, watch one episode of Receiver, watch 5 minutes of him talking after that Eagles game, it will become very clear how much the fumbles bothered him last year. So I think that has been a big emphasis. He said last year, he talked about, we bought every piece of equipment that we can find to work on not fumbling. If there's a piece of equipment that we don't have, we bought it on Amazon this week. I think that's how he put it.
Did they buy a game-worn Darius Slay and bring him into camp and just have him poke at the ball?
That would have probably been helpful, I suppose. But, yeah, I mean, that was a big focus for them throughout the end of last season and the beginning of this season. And certainly I think it played into Alexander Madison not being here. I think all of the ball security issues he had was a problem. And the fact that they didn't have that issue this year, I think he looks at as this is a sign of progress. And I kind of asked him, well, that's great, but a lot of the guys you have playing in this game are not your starters. They're not the people that are going to be counted on when you need a yard on fourth down and everybody's trying to strip the ball. So how does this carry over? He said, well, the expectation and the understanding of what's important, those same players are sitting next to the starters in all of the meetings. So he said, I still think there's carryover here because if they're doing it, it's showing that our messaging is getting through, and I'm going to keep emphasizing this with players. So I just think we can debate whether or not that's going to work, but I think when the head coach has something on his mind, it's always worth stopping and paying attention to, okay, there's something driving this, and I'm curious to hear more about what that is.
Right.
So that's kind of why I got into that as the lead on one of my stories from the game.
And he even mentioned it during the broadcast with you guys. I think it was Jalen Williams maybe back on a kick return. And the first thing he says is, as soon as I see Jalen Williams back there, I'm thinking about our commitment to ball security and limiting turnovers, because the only time Jalen Williams has had his hands on a ball is an interception in practice. And so it seems like, it's a fundamental topic, rudimentary, if you will. You got ball security holding on to it. But PA, 31, 32 turnovers last year, you cut that thing in half, and we're talking about a team that was likely in the postseason. And it seems as though the head coach, if he is up late at night thinking about anything, it might just be the lack of fumbles that he's anticipating or hoping for in 2024.
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
Yeah, well, and you think about the timing of some of those things last year, whether it's fumbles or dropped passes or deflected passes.
Early in games,
the pick before halftime in the opener, the Jefferson fumble at the goal line when he's trying to stretch for the end zone in Philly, and it goes out of the end zone and ends up being a touchback. And
third game, Chargers
game where T.J. Hawkinson drops it. And
that was a tough catch. He needs to make it, but it was tough.
Yeah, and then I think the Evans, Josh Palmer catching it off of Caleb Evans' hand.
The game was over.
Right.
I mean, it bounced right out off his chest, hands, whatever. Yeah. The game was over, and the Vikings were going to win.
Yep. So you have those. You have, I think, Madison against Denver had a fumble. And all of these are one-score games or one play.
Opening drive.
Kareem Jackson tried to decapitate Joshua Dobbs, and it was missed by the stripes.
Right. Yeah. There were. It was the flip side of what we saw in 22, where they won all those close games. So last year, it was losing a lot of those, a lot like 21 is, and then there's one play sometimes that changes those things. And I think a lot of how they're looking at this is if we're just more efficient, we can be effective enough to be in the playoff race, even if they don't have the full complement of offensive personnel, even though there's a change at quarterback. I mean, with all the changes at quarterback last year, if they're more efficient, they're in the playoffs, because they win some of those one-score games. So I think a lot of it is just, you heard Mike Zimmer used to talk about this too. If you don't beat yourself, you're going to win 8 games at a minimum every year. And I think there's a lot of that driving Kevin O'Connell's emphasis on it too.
With Saturday at Philly, and there's no need to get loud and or harp on it. I'm going to talk about the officiating. It's the lazy way to look at it, and I've heard it multiple times, is, well, it's preseason for the refs too.
Yeah.
No, that's, Saturday was one of the worst, most poorly officiated games I've ever seen in any game I've called. And it never changed. It just from balls being put in the wrong spot, clock being started at the wrong time.
When he was on with you guys asking for, when he's going like this, saying, can I get a re-up on the clock?
Adrian Hill's staff, they messed so many things up in that game. And I had this moment on TV with and radio with O'Connell where he's like, hey, PA, what do you think? And I said, well, I think he dove ahead and got the first down.
Yeah.
And then he looked at it and he's like, I think I'm going to challenge it.
Yes.
Well, go back and look at it. They put the ball in a different spot.
Yeah.
Like it was like 7 feet back or like 4.5 feet back from where my man's knee was. So that Adrian Hill group, they were just rough in that game.
Well, and they did this thing where they were basically down an official, right? I don't know if they did the whole
They were
game.
down a guy,
That was on purpose. And I think he talked about this. I think briefly there was some crosstalk with the officials when he was on with you guys, where
see
basically
that? No, I didn't. I was way back here. Oh,
yes,
so good.
yes, because
that was on TV.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was
because some stuff between segments with Adrian Hill was fantastic.
Yeah,
it was like that.
I'm sure it was, and a lot of it was. I think they said they did that on purpose because they want to prepare themselves for a situation during the season where if one of the officials goes down, if he's in a collision or something. So there is, I mean, in the sense that it's preseason for everybody, there is some of that involved with that one too. Is they're trying things just to be ready in case they get in that spot. But yeah, there were a lot of things in that game, and he was still bothered, you could tell afterwards, about the last play with Jaron Hall where he gets hit. Julian Okwara hits him up high. There was no call on that. It ends up being a kind of a leg contusion that he ended up coming out of the game. But you could have called roughing the passer on that pretty easily, and I think he was still a little bothered that did not get called.
All right, well, Star Tribune, StarTribune.com, accessible via Ben's Twitter, at Ben Goessling, via the X Machine. There are 5 things we learned from Lincoln Financial Field. The topics include Jaron Hall, also the Vikings quarterbacks were hit 9 times and sacked 4 times. Dwight McGlothern looked good again. The Vikings running game and it's the impotent nature at times last year and the potency it had setting up the pass during this preseason. And Will Reichert, the Alabama kicker who hit 4 field goals, including one from 57. I'd like to begin with Jaron Hall because this potentially is perplexing.
Yeah.
What is next for Jaron? And I was chatting with somebody yesterday about some other teams in the division, and I didn't know this because I didn't watch the Green Bay Packers play preseason games, but with Sean Clifford or this Pratt cat, this rookie that they have, I guess Clifford came out of the gate in the first preseason game and was on fire.
Right.
I mean, I think he's been 2 of 10 since, and they're really negative on him.
Yeah.
And then
that Denver game, I think he was really bad. They scored 2 points.
Is that the most recent one?
They played this weekend.
Okay.
I think it's the Ravens.
Yeah, but I guess there are major concerns or wonderment about who's going to back up Jordan Love. And I guess I really hadn't, thought of that until last night.
That's where we're going here.
Jaron Hall, you put him on the practice squad. I've elevated my percent chance that I think Green Bay gets him or goes after him and puts him on their active roster, and he becomes their backup quarterback.
Yeah, there's certainly a possibility of that. I mean, and I think there is a lot of that discussion that's going to go into the decision of whether or not you keep him. Because,
and he has that leg, so how's that factor into it?
Well, yeah, it didn't look that bad to me, but, we'll see how that goes. It looked like he was rubbing it a little bit, but then he was kind of standing up on the sideline afterwards. He seemed okay from what I saw in the locker room after the game. We'll have to see how that plays out. But, yes, from the standpoint of he plays in a similar offense. It's from that same tree, the kind of Shanahan-McVay tree, obviously, that Matt LaFleur does in Green Bay. He has shown, I think, improvement throughout the preseason, and they certainly saw him last year. I mean, they played against him in that New Year's Eve game where he kind of looked, pretty much lost. Not kind of. He looked lost in that game. And
we talked about it last week. They have the coaching staff and the organization to even ponder keeping him.
You have to get past that.
They have to get past that game.
Yep, I agree with that. And I think a lot of what he did in the preseason gives you some hint that maybe he has moved forward, and I think there's been growth. But, yes, if you are a team that needs a backup quarterback, and you're saying this guy's played in a similar offense, he has looked better in the preseason, and it doesn't necessarily hurt that he's coming from a team that the Packers play twice, including one in Week 4.
Right.
So there could be interest like that, and I think it is, and I asked O'Connell about it after the game, is how much do you balance the fact that if you try to put him through to the practice squad, you may expose him and may lose him with waivers. He said, that has to go into the discussion because the rules now, for people that maybe aren't up to speed on it, the NFL now allows you to have your third quarterback come from your practice squad. So he does not have to be on your active roster anymore. Basically what that does is it frees up a roster spot for people to say, we can put our third guy on the practice squad. If somebody gets hurt, 2 guys get hurt during the game, we can pull them up basically as a freebie, which I think is a good rule. So it may push more teams to say, let's try to stash that third guy on the practice squad. But when you're a player of Jaron Hall's stature in the NFL, you go through waivers. When you're not 4 or 5 years into the league, you go through waivers. So they would have to cut him, expose him to waivers for 24 hours, and then they could put him on the practice squad. But any other team can claim him, put him on their active roster, and say, this is our guy, at least for, I think he has to stay on the active roster for 3 weeks. But they could lose him if they do that. So there is that question of, he played well, 31 other teams are going to watch that film and see that. So the risk of trying to sneak him through is that you could possibly lose him to another team in a waiver claim.
And there's just no shot that he has played his way into making them question whether they would keep him for the upside, that they would actually put him in the 2 spot. Mullins is 2. And
are you asking or stating?
That's what I'm asking. Because I'm pondering this where, you talk about the way and the level that he played this year, and at this level, the finances don't really matter, but kind of the idea of moving forward, you'll have a healthy J.J. McCarthy into the offseason, and you have this kid that you drafted, and it is truly night and day between what we saw a year ago and what we've seen through 3 preseason games. Is it just where this is already a formality that Mullins is the second QB?
Yeah.
Or has Jaron Hall done anything to make that a conversation?
I think it's still Mullins as the 2. I think the experience in the offense, I think just having a little more experience in the NFL is something they're going to want, especially if Sam Darnold struggles or gets hurt. I can't imagine they would want to make themselves have to lean on Jaron Hall to that degree. I think they'd still want Mullins there as the kind of the firewall that we've kind of looked at him being the whole time. But the interesting thing, just as we look at the future here, is that Darnold and Mullins are both free agents after this year. They have 2 quarterbacks who are signed beyond this season, Jaron Hall and J.J. McCarthy. A lot of things can change. Certainly if Darnold plays well, a lot of things could change there. But if you go forward and you say J.J. McCarthy's the guy, and then you have Jaron Hall developing as a backup who's been in the system for 3 years now, that's a nice luxury to have too. So I wonder if they'll look forward and say, okay, if we keep him now, we also can continue to build this, and we basically have 2 quarterbacks who have been in our building. We've developed them. We know what they can do. They know the system, all of those things. That would be a nice benefit for them. And then, if he's really good, you say, well, okay, let's try to trade him and get a pick in the future. I think a lot of those calculations probably come into the decision surrounding Jaron Hall, too.
And a couple of things there. If O'Connell had the take of, why do I need to use a roster spot on that? When he's not going to play special teams.
Right.
And I have the other kid on the horizon. Now, the horizon, McCarthy, it's quite a ways down the road.
Right.
But he is your property.
Yes.
And so, therefore, why do I need to do this now? Secondly, I think O'Connell, well, I know he ran a lot of different plays for Hall this year than he did in the preseason last year. He put him on bootlegs. He set up screens, look left, swing it back to, as he says, Debo this way. Let's fade left, fade right. He put him on a lot of different plays this preseason. Maybe because Jaron's likable and he's really, really smart in the in the room, in the quarterback's room. Wes Phillips credits him and lauds him for his scholarly approach to the game, asks all the right questions, and then we had that Green Bay game last year. He asked all the right questions up to that game. Scholarly approach was there up to that game. He was awful. It was ridiculous how unprepared he looked. And he wasn't unprepared. He was prepared fine.
And it was in a big spot.
And that's a reflection on the coaching staff. So like I said to you last week, is for them to even ponder keep, they have to get that out of their minds. Because it may be like that again, but it also may not. So with Jaron, if Kevin were like, I got the other kid, he's going to be fine. And I need this guy here and this guy here. So he goes to the practice squad, and if somebody takes him, it's not, hey, he's your problem. It's not that.
Right.
Hey, he's yours, and you got to go make him active.
That is the thing that he may say, you know what, this is okay, because I suppose the other thing you could look at there and say, this was a 5th-round quarterback that if he's made enough progress for somebody to want him in a year and a half, they may also be able to say, well, why can't we do that again?
Right.
Like, why can't we go find another guy and develop him?
That's a good point.
And maybe this is an endorsement as much as anything of their ability to develop people it leads to the point where they feel like he could be a competent quarterback. So
that's a great point.
He may look at this. I mean, if they were to cut him and say, we'll take our chances here, we'd love to have him, but if we don't get him, oh well.
Yeah.
They may look at it and say, this is proof that our development process works. And can you say that about preseason football? I don't know. I mean, that's always the question.
Well, absolutely you can, because it's Hall looked dramatically different than last preseason. Yep. And they also opened the menu a little bit for him from the play calling standpoint, that they gave him, more of, and not markedly more, but more of a voluminous selection.
Yep.
And I'm just wondering if that was to put some stuff on film to give the kid a chance to land somewhere else because they like him.
That could be too. I think a lot of it is just that question, if you're going to keep him, like we're saying, of how much of a difference do you see between what they asked him to do in the preseason and most probably importantly, the speed of it on the defense and the complexity that you're seeing.
There you go.
How much does that stuff transfer to what you'll see in the regular season when the last thing you saw in the regular season was very bad?
Rob.
So there's a lot of that they'll have to figure out, and how you balance all of that out probably is what dictates the decision they make on it.
The development piece that you brought up, that's A-list stuff. And here's why. Because we can go all the way back to, now like Jaron Hall in the preseason last year.
Yeah.
That's still developing. Cousins, he and O'Connell, they're together in Washington, but he's not working with him the same way. So Cousins gets here, and we're on an outside chance of an MVP trajectory with the way Cousins was having the best season he had ever had in his life after that 49ers game on Monday Night Football.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
without Justin Jefferson too.
Oh, great point. Wow, that's right. What'd they win, 5 without JJ?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
All right, so that's development. That's mentor Tyro. That's teacher student, and it was working. So now, like with Dobbs, okay, you can't develop Dobbs on the fly. No. I don't care if you have a bye or not. You can't teach him to pass and change a large part of your offense to go read option. Hey, let's run the single wing. Let's run the wildcat.
Yeah. Especially when the regular season's not for development anymore.
Right. And then now all of a sudden we got to change 40 play calls, and Jordan Addison and so-and-so are jumping offside because the play calls are new.
That wasn't going to happen.
Not going to happen. All right. And he's gone. And with Hall, same thing. It went worse than I think anybody thought it would in that Green Bay game. Mullins is Mullins. And we've talked about this. Nick comes into the game against Cincinnati. Looks like the O'Connell offense. There's Jefferson running wide open. He's being thrown open. Players on the run. I think they had 400 some odd yards of offense in that game. And then
they did.
And likewise against Detroit. Another Mullins game, they averaged about 400 yards of offense. That's an O'Connell offense. So that the full expectation is that is going to be Darnold, who is being raised by this staff as a starter, not the staff that he had with the Jets, not the Matt Rule overmatched amateur level staff in Carolina. They raise quarterbacks, and there's a reason into the draft when everybody from Caleb Williams to J.J. McCarthy to the Washington Cat to Drake May, all of them were saying, we want to play for this guy.
Yeah.
Even Caleb Williams, who knew he wasn't coming here, were like, yes, this is where we would like to go because of this guy, Kevin O'Connell, what we know about him, what he said to us at the Combine in these meetings. It was just different. That's why all those high-end kids were like, this would be a great place to go.
Yeah, McCarthy claimed in his opening press conference that was unanimous among those 6.
Oh, it was.
Between Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, McCarthy, Penix, and Bo Nix, they all said this is the spot. And it's O'Connell, it's getting to throw to Jefferson, Hawkinson, Addison, it's the facilities, it's the commitment from ownership, all those things.
It's Kevin working with players that age.
Yep.
It's the relatability he has to them because he's on the younger side, but he's also very smart.
Right, yeah. I mean, all of those things, those guys all said, this is a great spot for me to develop. It's good for my own career path and all of that kind of stuff. So that was why there was such an interest in being in Minnesota from all of those quarterbacks. So if those things are not changing, you may get to the point where you say, well, we can do this again.
Right.
So
I like that.
I mean, that I still think the Hall question is one of the big ones in the next couple of days, and part of me thinks they may say, you know what, we've invested to this degree with him, let's continue with it. But if they were to say, let's take the risk, the confidence in their own development process may be part of what gets them there.
Yeah, I'd go the other way, and we're going to pause now. Offense, I have Darnold, Mullins.
Yeah.
Running backs, I have Jones, Ty Chandler, Kene Wanwu, C.J. Ham. Tight ends, for now, I have Tunyon, Munt, and Oliver. I only have 3.
Yep.
6 wide receivers down to Tristan, the obvious 5. At least, well, it's not obvious. I'm sorry. Jefferson, Addison, Naylor, Brandon Powell, Trent Sherfield Sr., Tristan Jackson. Offensive line, I have Darisaw, Brandell, Bradbury, Ingram, O'Neal, Quessenberry, Rouse, Juergens. Then you get to the Reisner injury and Robinson.
Feeney probably, too.
Well, who?
Dan Feeney.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, we'll see. Fandini, I mean, did he even play in any of the games?
No, he's been hurt, too.
Okay.
There's guaranteed money there involved.
Right. So. Well, another thing I heard 18 times this preseason, you can't make the club in the tub.
That's true.
I mean, which is true.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this Robinson they played him a lot.
Yeah.
And they moved him around, and he's young.
Yeah.
So that's how I have it. We'll see offensively. We'll see what Ben thinks of that, Nordo, too. And then we'll get into the defense with Ben Goessling. Star Tribune, StarTribune.com. Go to his Twitter, at Ben Goessling, and sign up for that Access Vikings newsletter. All right. It comes out once a week. Very cool. A lot of tricks to it and some some curveballs or some exotic plays, as an offense would say. It's just not just straight writing. It's much more. In fact, how would you explain some ancillary things you do? Like, can you do trivia or something like that?
Yeah, we've done some of that. We had kind of a deep dive trivia question a week or 2 ago. So a lot of that comes from just me thinking of different things. Mm-hmm. So if you want access to the weird corners of my brain,
there we go.
Good place to get it.
And
whether you want that or not is your decision. But.
Ben and his teammates, MV3, they're going to do an Access Vikings podcast at 11 a.m. Right around the corner here at the Star Tribune building. So stop by and say hello to Ben and his cohorts. You're listening to 9 to Noon from the Great Minnesota Get Together, adjacent to the Grandstand. And we thank Mesh Besher and Spence for aiding us with our fan stands. Don't forget about the Pro Shop around the corner. Take a look at those T-shirts, the hats, the sweatshirts, stuff like that. And 9 to Noon continues after this.
Get ready for an unforgettable experience at the Outlaw Music Festival coming to Somerset Amphitheater Friday, September 6th. Be there for an incredible day of live performances from Willie Nelson, Bob Dylan, John Mellencamp, and more. Tickets still available. KFAN.com keyword calendar.
So, Darnold, Mullins, those two. What do you think? You think, well, we just talked about that. So that would you put Hall in there?
I have him in there right now, yes.
Okay.
I went back and forth on that one a lot, but I have him in there.
Jones, Chandler, Wanwu, Ham.
Yes.
Okay.
Same there.
Tunyon, Munt, Oliver.
I went Muse instead of Tunyon.
Mm-hmm.
The question I have with Tunyon is how healthy is he going to be?
Oh, that's the question I have with Muse.
Yes, it's a question with both. It's a question with Reisner. It's a question with Feeney.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, a lot of that stuff. I think a lot of our differences are going to be on how healthy do we think people are?
Right. Receiver, are you 6 or 5?
6, and it's the same 6.
So we're lockstep.
Yep.
Offensive line. So you, Dan Feeney, maybe you got some Feeney steam, and he's a veteran.
Yeah.
So maybe you are at more practices than me. You attend markedly more press conferences than me, and you're also really good at what you do with the sneaky conversations. So maybe Feeney slides in there specifically if Reisner is injured.
Yeah.
The same people have told you, the same people who told me, who told you, or vice versa, that Michael Juergens will be a starting center in the NFL one day.
Yep.
All right. Well, despite a decent start to the preseason, some things kind of fell off a little bit. He was, you can argue, he was responsible for Reichard's blocked field goal.
Yep.
But that's going to happen. Seventh round, right, for Juergens?
Yes.
Yeah, he's a 7th rounder, and there are people in the organization who think he's going to be a starting center one day, and I why are we really not ones to argue because we're casting our gaze to something we can't see. They know more about it.
Right.
So I got Juergens in, don't you?
I did not have him in.
Wow, man.
But so part of
the practice squad.
Yes.
Okay.
So the question there is, do you feel like
That's a good
other
point.
teams have the same opinion of him that he gets picked up?
Okay. Who's the backup center?
Well,
that's the
Dan
problem.
Feeney's healthy. It's Dan Feeney.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's the question. And that one, a lot of those, I think we may differ, and I think it's very possible that either of us are right or wrong on those.
Okay. Well, as the meshing the practice squad with the active, and if you take somebody, they got to go active for 3 games.
Yep.
I mean, it's a long shot somebody takes Juergens off your practice squad, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
Okay.
So they may be able to. They may say we think we can get him through.
All right. So then, Darrisaw, Brandell, Bradbury, Ingram, O'Neal, Quessenberry, Rouse. Let's put Fandini with either Reisner or Robinson.
Yeah.
I would say, but not both, because if you go both, you get up to 10.
Yep.
Then that gets my offense to 25, and I need 26 on defense.
Right.
So this is, is where we are right now. All right. So I'm going to run these names by you. Just tell me what you think, okay? Defensive line. Harrison Phillips.
Yep.
Jonathan Bullard. Jerry Tillery.
Yep.
Jaquelin Roy.
I did not have Jaquelin Roy make.
Levi Drake Rodriguez.
Yes.
Jonah Williams.
Yes.
Okay. Edge. Grenard, Turner, Pat Jones, Andrew Van Ginkel.
Yep.
Jihad Ward.
Yep.
Bo Richter.
Those were the 6 I had as well.
Okay. Inside linebacker, Cashman, Ivan Pace Jr.
Yep.
Dallas Gant.
I
got Gant.
Hill.
I got Gant putting an L on the veteran.
Okay.
Rouge Hill.
Yep.
We'll see.
He was
Cornerback.
good on Saturday.
Yeah, he was really good in Cleveland too in the joints. And he's it's with Rouge Hill. He's guaranteed. He's vested. He's guaranteed if he's on the roster week number 1, no matter what happens.
Yeah.
That ain't the case for Gant.
Right.
Got to start thinking about things like that.
Yep.
Next level Kwesi.
So Asamoah and Gant were your backups?
No.
Asamoah
I do
out.
not have Asamoah in the mix.
Okay.
I also have Asamoah out.
Cornerbacks, Gilmore, Shaq Griffin, Byron Murphy Jr.,
Yep.
Fabian Moreau, Caleb, and Dwight McGlothern. I have 6. That's
had
cornerback.
Same 6.
Okay.
Yep.
Safety. So to get to my 26, I have 5. I have Hitman, Bynum, Metellus, Jackson, and Jay Ward.
Same for me.
Okay.
Yep.
What
scene?
What are going to be some discussable points with the podcast today? And how long does said podcast go?
We'll go for most of the hour. It sounds like Wobble has Derek Falvey at noon doing some Twins chat. So
yeah.
We'll have to make sure we're out of the way by then. We'll probably won't go the full hour. It'll probably be 45 minutes. It's generally about the length of an episode for us. But we're going to talk a lot of roster stuff. Kramer has Caleb Evans getting cut. So we differed on a few of those things.
Yeah.
The class of 2022 and which players kind of meet their reckoning here is, I think, going to be a lot of the conversation because there's a lot of those questions that are going to be answered in the next 24 hours.
Yeah, but see, they're and I don't engage in stuff like this on social media, but there are 2 ways to look at it. It's like, okay, your 2022 draft, look who you've cut. That was an absolute failure.
Yeah.
Cool. And the sun's going to set in the west, too. You know, so what's next?
Yep.
It's like laying all these problems out. All right, honey, well, what are the solutions here?
Right.
And next, it would be, and this would be my take, is like, say, Asamoah, Caleb Evans, Lewisine. Let's start there. Let's say those 3 aren't on the team and they get cut. Well, that's somebody's self-awareness recognizing I'm not going to go Tyrell Johnson on it and bang my head on the wall and just keep these guys on the team because I drafted them and I feel emboldened to keep them to justify my opinion.
Yep.
That ain't Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. At least I don't think it is.
I agree with that, and I think you already saw it with the Andrew Booth trade in the sense that he has, and he's talked about this before.
That's a good point.
As a stock trader, he's like, you get evaluated at trades within minutes, and if you miss, you got to just shake it off and go on to the next one. So,
right.
I mean, you've seen GMs in the past where it's, I drafted this guy, I stuck my neck out to say that I was right about this guy. I want to give him chances to show that he can do it, which helps me show that I was right. I don't think that Kwesi looks at it quite that way, and I do think that's where the stock trader thing comes in.
Yeah,
that he's going to say, "Yeah, we missed. We're going to miss sometimes."
Yeah,
there's not this illusion with him of we're going to nail it every single time. We're going to be perfect. He seems to understand that there's error, there's uncertainty, there's just randomness to the whole thing. And if you miss, you move on, and you don't try to hold on to things for the sake of just trying to redeem something that's not going to be redeemed.
God bless you, my brother. It's a blessing to have you in our lives, and you're very good at what you do.
Appreciate it,
Thank
man.
you.
Thank you.
Ben Goessling, ladies and gentlemen, card-carrying member of the Love Covenant, the real Love Covenant. 9 to noon continues around the corner. It's 10:58. I'm Paul Allen from the State Fair. It's a steamy Monday at FM 100.3 KFAN.